Okay, so I'm going to do my journal reflection number 8. The 3 questions this time are: what do you consider to be your natural helping behaviors? How do you integrate these with how you function as a student affairs professional? And how might students interpret your natural helping behaviors? So I would say my biggest helping behavior is I'm more inclined to listen to others before I talk about myself or offer up my opinions. That is something that I've always done, but more so when I was getting my bachelor's degree through my leadership program. Um, I found that I was more likely to not ask questions, or like I'm more likely to ask questions than me offer up information based off those questions and what other people respond with. And I will based off like my relationship with people. However, if it's somebody new, then I'm less likely to do so. So I would say I'm more inclined to listen to myself or listen to others than talk about myself. And something else is that I believe that attending behavior is important. While I didn't know before, like that's what it was called, I always make sure that I try to give that person undivided attention. And I remember that that was something that always bothered me with one of my old roommates, is that like I'd be trying to talk to her about something and she'd be like on her phone, and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna talk to you about this anymore, you know? Like I feel like I give so much of myself to listen that I actually appreciate the same respect, but I make sure that I give that undivided attention to the individual that I'm speaking with. I would say it's very natural for me to use encouragers. Um, sometimes I don't use them. Sometimes I believe silence is okay, but I feel like a lot of times I will use encouragers just to keep the person talking, or like let them know like I'm listening to you, like I hear you, and I don't want to stop them in their tracks. So I'll use those encouragers then. Um, Asking questions is something that I've noticed myself doing a lot more within the last like 3 years or so. I want to know more, and I've become more confident in myself, and I believe that's easier for me to ask questions, and so I'm constantly asking questions, whether it be in an interview setting or not. And those questions, excuse me, oh, may not always be open ended, um, which is something that I noticed myself doing, and I worked really hard to fix it when I was in the fall semester working with my students and advising them. The next question was: how do you integrate these and how you function as a student affairs professional? So, within my assistantship, I am very fortunate to be able to advise students on a frequent basis. I meet with my 3 student leaders. I have hour meetings with 3 of them and another hour meeting with another 3 of them, and I talk to them and ask them questions about what they're planning for their class. And then I also use that time to ask about themselves, and so I use that time to get to know my mentors as people rather than just for their student leader role. I think that is something that is very important, and I will always continue to do that because I see the value in it. And I know that somebody did that for me, and it changed my course, my path, and here I am. And so I make sure to talk with them about their personal lives too, and I always share with them, like, you can share as much or as little as you want. I just want to get to know you, and I always preface that with any student that I meet. And with my mentors, I make sure that they're taking care of themselves. I feel like they can't take care of other students if they can't take care of themselves. And so I make sure that they're drinking water. I make sure that they're sleeping. And I make sure that they're eating more than a bag of chips. I think that's so important. And I want my students to know that I care about them as people rather than them working with me to serve other students. So I think that's really important. And so that's how I use that within my role as a student affairs professional. And kind of along the same lines of that is I always take the time to get to know my students, rather than just talking to them about their academic struggles, because students come with their own experiences from before in being a first gen low income student, from where some of these students come from. Like, they haven't had the best household growing up. Like, one-parent families, or somebody abused them, or their parents have been in jail, and that's hard. And so I make sure that I get to know my students for who they are as people and what they bring to the table, and meeting my students where they're at. And then building off of that, and then we bring in the conversation of their academics and maybe what we can do to help them be successful. And so that's how I kind of integrate my natural helping skills as a student affairs professional. But how students might interpret those, oh, sorry, Dr. Bailey, interpret those natural helping behaviors. I would say students interpret me as a trusting person. I have even had students tell me that they see me as someone who genuinely cares about them, and I think that is so important. And that empowered, or not empowered. I would say it encouraged me to keep doing what I'm doing with my students, to help them and to grow. And I want them to know that I will always be there for them to talk to me. And if I'm not available, then I will provide the next available time that I can meet with them. And so I think that they view me as a very open, willing, trusting person, that I will be there for them and that I will be their support system. I think that is really important too, because a lot of students come from places where they don't have that, or their parents just don't understand. And so having somebody who's been there, done that, I think that's really important for my students to see that I have that ability to be that support for them, because I've been there and I've done that, and I've walked the line of, you have your school life and you have your family life, and they don't always mix. And that's hard to do by yourself. So my students interpret me as a support system based off of my natural behaviors, because I listen and I care about them as people first. So I think that's all I have for my Reflection Journal 8. And that's all I've got.